Welcome to The Beat. I'm Ari Melber. We're tracking the Senate grilling RFK Jr. He actually admits under questioning here people should not rely on his medical advice.
I don't think people should be taking medical advice
Right.
from me.
All right. We're also covering that and these protests he's facing.
RFK,
Quite a hearing, and we have updates on that tonight. While President Trump is facing a scandal that's overwhelming this first foreign trip of his term, total condemnation for the bid to get a $400 million jet from Qatar. Conservatives rebuking it as a blatant grift. Elected Republicans opposing this and really trying to duck what they see as obvious political blowback for something they want no part of. Democrats blasting it, of course. And then many ethics and nonpartisan experts agreeing this is actually numerically the worst attempted corruption in the history of the White House. Those are just some of the headlines battering Trump during the trip as he lands today in the country offering this controversial and possibly illegal gift, Qatar. And in one sign, the entire plan might already be on the rocks. Neither side publicly addressed this Trump controversy over the plane as he deboarded a different plane. Now, for many Western democracies, Qatar is seen as a pretty extreme and challenging dictatorship to deal with. It runs as an autocratic monarchy. They have crackdowns on human rights, limits on free speech, and of course, the press over there. They fund Al Jazeera, and many U.S. experts view that as partly a tool of foreign influence, sometimes cutting against U.S. interests. They also work with the U.S. military, so it's a relationship that's complicated, nuanced to be sure, but it complicates American interests because this is a regime that does Iran diplomacy, that hosts a Taliban office in Doha. And this is not news to Donald Trump, by the way. Back around the first term, he was blasting this same Qatar regime as what he called a super terror funder. And when attacking Democrats in 2016 over their alleged links to Gulf states, he emphasized this and related regimes' records on human rights.
It's a criminal enterprise. Saudi Arabia giving $25 million, Qatar, all of these countries. You talk about women and women's rights. So these are people that push gays off business, off buildings. These are people that kill women and treat women horribly, and yet you take their money. So I'd like to ask you right now, why don't you give back the money?
Very clearly, that was Donald Trump saying you shouldn't take money from Qatar. He was appealing to an understandable concern about any U.S. politician who could be compromised by foreign money and influence. Well, critics say he may be projecting. He may know exactly that kind of foreign money conflict from his own experience. It is his company and family that continues to try to profit off his position here and the dual role of being a Trump org founder and president of the United States dealing with these countries, as you see all of these efforts, to say nothing of the international crypto. Qatar clearly wants to play ball. Qatar would rather pay money, which it gathers from its resources and people in a system where they have no accountability. They're a monarchy. They'd rather take that money to buy influence than change any of the policies that the U.S. has a problem with. Indeed, Qatar has been trying to transform its reputation, the Times reports, by spending millions on lobbyists in Washington, including Pam Bondi, now Trump's attorney general. Now, Trump's visit, the Times notes, is a part of this wider success for a very pricey influence strategy for a relatively controversial autocratic monarchy. And their strategy appears to be working. You have this regime trying to buy their way to some sort of better reputation or treatment by the United States. That's the problem underlying the whole jet gift. And it's also why, separate from the ethics, we're not getting an offer of a jet for our politicians from Canada. Qatar has more cleanup to do. And so even apart from the obvious ethics, which should have made this whole thing dead on arrival or not cleared for takeoff, if you prefer, even beyond that, Qatar has faced skepticism from American leaders for its actions on moral grounds and on the normal foreign policy grounds that they're adverse to U.S. interests. And so here, instead of facing the normal pressure of possibly changing those policies or just paying the consequences, The evidence and the influence campaign suggests what everyone's concerned about, that Qatar's trying to corrupt the United States process from inside, using or abusing money and influence to buy a closer relationship than the facts would otherwise warrant. Now, this is according to multiple administrations and experts that have previously determined that Qatar, at a minimum, should be kept at arm's length, that you don't just embrace a monarchy like this, or you can dial back to the Trump quote I played you, or his own focus on the terror funding. And that was back before all the Qatar money offers were coming in. The facts and the offer from Qatar suggest that this is not about what's best for America. It's about a foreign effort to make Qatar great, to take a turn on the Reagan phrase that Trump rebooted, of course, for his campaigns. And this isn't a new or creative type of corruption to try to make Qatar great. It's actually one of the oldest things in the book. The founders of this country knew that there was always going to be a risk for the United States as a democracy with rotating leaders who don't just hold on to money like a monarchy, that they might someday have people in important positions who were basically weak or greedy. And the founders were worried that weak or greedy leaders could get bought off, could get compromised, even by something so easily and noticeable as blatant as a foreign gift. And so keep that in mind when you remember the Trump family is doing the kind of double dealing with these deals in the exact countries that Trump has prioritized on this first visit. And so to connect the dots tonight, the founders did not leave it up to any one leader to decide when to take gifts. They permanently limited any such foreign gifts in our Constitution. You may have heard reference to this recently given the news this week. And if a foreign country or king, which actually applies given that Qatar is run through a monarchy, if a king tried offering any gift that wasn't, say, for the people or the country of the United States, but was actually just to try to corrupt one person, a politician or leader, the founders were going to ban that or make it very hard to do. The classic example would be France gifting the Statue of Liberty, the beautiful, beautiful statue you see there, for the U.S. centennial. That was a gift to the country, of course, not to any one politician. It is indeed a public statue in New York that many people see still, all these years later, as a great iconic tourist attraction, which they can visit. But remember, that was approved by Congress. And it wasn't a gift for the politician. As for a king who would try to give a huge gift to an officer or even a president, well, I'll remind you, U.S. officers under the Constitution cannot accept any president from any king or foreign state without the consent of Congress. The founders viewed it as obvious that Congress would never approve big, lavish personal gifts, let alone gigantic ones, and thus that limit meant you would have a check. A rough count suggests a majority of senators today are already on record against this gift plan, when you have the Democrats and several Republican senators who've already spoken out. So it looks like by that whip count, Trump can't even clear this constitutional hurdle, and that's even if his attorney general and former Qatar lobbyist says she likes the idea. So that's the rule. Now, Trump could be pushed to drop this plan from all of the blowback before it's even tested in court. It is still significant because it shows you where his priorities are. It shows you what he's trying to do. It shows you in the clearest possible sense that this personal enrichment matters more than what the U.S. might get. Again, if you use the Statue of Liberty example, why not give the $400 million if it's for the taking to some public project? Why not? Because it's not about you. It's not about the oath he took. It's clearly about him. And because, as I mentioned this in our coverage here, because of the fact that it's so physical and visible and it's a jet, it seems to be having more blowback, especially among Republicans, than other self-interested maneuvers, certainly more than the cryptocurrency, which feels kind of, hard to track. For his part, Trump has defensively argued that taking foreign gifts is, he argues, somehow, quote, smart. Well, the Constitution, the U.S. military, the CIA policies, they all disagree. If you're defending the United States, if you're a general or a CIA spy, it's not considered smart to pocket the gifts, which, by the way, are obviously offered in all sorts of ways and which tough, strong public servants are supposed to resist because you don't want to be compromised. Trump is now arguing that the Gulf states have bigger planes, maybe greater planes, and he wants the U.S. to kind of keep up, he says, even if that means having what would become the first ever Qatar Force One, if you will. This really is his argument. It's his new talking point in an interview where even Fox News felt the need to bring up the scandal.
When you land and you see Saudi Arabia and you see UAE and you see Qatar and you see all these, and they have these brand new Boeing 747s mostly, and you see ours next to it, this is like a totally different plane. It's much smaller. We're the United States of America. I believe that we should have the most impressive plane.
Yes. We've gone from what the rules are to the self-dealing to the sort of general statement that we should have the most impressive plane. First of all, if you think about what's been going on with inflation and the prices up and the tariff war, we don't see a lot of evidence that most Americans are thinking about who has the larger plane when they land in various foreign capitals. Second of all, if you want a bigger plane, you run the United States. You can go down to Congress and get that legislated. You can do it without any national security or espionage risk. It's a classic Trump deflection where he starts trying to get people to talk about that and the size of planes instead of the real issue, which is you have a leader who 110 days in has been busy doing business deals with these very countries, making money with his family, selling a meme crypto coin that came out of thin air, getting transaction fees off that, working with the richest guy in the world, Elon Musk. Seems like a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with your life, your well-being, and how your economy is affecting your life and family. Now, this Trump jet, if you are keeping track, would dwarf literally every type of little gift that any president has ever taken, which, as you can see, are down to the tune of a couple $100K for Biden, Bush $1 million. A lot of those things are held in various public presentation areas. None of them involve a $400 million gift. NBC also reports that there'd be a high cost to getting this thing done. So when you take it all together, you don't choose when you follow the news and politics. We don't get to choose which issues break through. Indeed, there are people who are critics of Trump and human rights experts and Democratic activists who say, of all the things in these first 110 days, this is where we've heard more from Republican senators more quickly than picking up students off the street and allegedly appearing to target people based on their free speech and at times sending people to the wrong foreign prison and feeling like what is due process in America anymore, even to just name one bundle of issues. We're talking about the jet. But here's the thing. We don't choose. We live through it together. And certain people have certain reasons why they're more skeptical of Trump on this, that, or the other thing. It is very clear from the Republican response and the outrage and what now looks like an effort by Donald Trump to get out from under parts of this. This one broke through because of the sheer, blatant, physical, undeniable grift. We have two guests on the ethics of this, the pushback, and the foreign policy in 90 seconds. We're back with two of our MSNBC friends, Vanity Fair's Molly Jong-Fast and Eamon Moildean, host of MSNBC's The Weekend Primetime, who knows his way around foreign reporting and the region. And I mentioned there's nuances, of course, to all of these countries. But Donald Trump himself said there are problems in the way Qatar runs, and you shouldn't take money from them. Now all this has changed. So first of all, just on the foreign policy influence and or corruption efforts. What do you see there? Is it a good idea for U.S. policymakers or politicians to be taking such large gifts from a country like this?
The short answer is no. But our political system is designed in a way where foreign influence has many different avenues, some overt, some covert, right? I don't have to tell you about how much spending foreign governments do through proper lobbying channels, whether it's AIPAC or others or defense contractors. That's the kind of above board way of influencing our politics. The indirect way is perhaps what you're talking about right now. And, you know, I remember talking about this quite up to the very last minute of the election, where the sentiment from the Gulf was like, I don't want to say they favored Donald Trump, but they spoke Donald Trump's language.
A
This is
transactional language.
very much so. This is a part of the world that is all about making deals. And they understand that to make deals with people, they need to be able to speak in this kind of subtle language. What do you want? What can we do to make something better for you? Here's what we need. And that relationship has been the cornerstone of Middle East policy for the last 80 years, whether it's oil and what we need in exchange for access to that oil, or whether it is security, what is the access that we're going to give you to provide a security umbrella for the Persian Gulf?
Do you think some of these interests where the government and the so-called money or private sector or sovereign wealth funds, it's all quite mixed and openly mixed. Do they look at the Trump business enterprises as a way to curry favor with our government? And if so, isn't that a problem?
It is a problem for us in the United States. It's not a problem for them because, as you mentioned, the sovereign wealth funds of those countries, which are really important investment tools for the country and also important for their own development, are tools in which they can access the private sector in this country and, by extension, get the private sector in this country to lobby on behalf of them indirectly here in the United States. Look, you know this. Central Command is headquartered in Qatar. The relationship America has with Qatar goes back to 1996 when Central Command opened up shop there and had at one point up to, I think, 150,000, 200,000 U.S. soldiers there. The same monarchy that was approved by the United States military to set up shop there is the same monarchy that we're dealing with today. And they have also played a very important role for the United States because the United States, under previous administrations, whether it be Republican or Democrats, have asked the government of Qatar, hey, keep an open relationship with the Taliban, keep an open relationship with Hamas, keep an open relationship with Iran for us, because that way it allows us to speak to them indirectly, negotiate hostage releases, negotiate some kind of trade deals, things like that.
Molly, politically back on the home front, this has broken through. I mentioned that Donald Trump's ultimate profiteering off the made-up cryptocurrency could get very high. It could be in the hundreds of millions.
Right.
That's been going on. It's been reported. It hasn't broken through like this, like the shiny plane.
Right. No, the plane has really broken through, and we know it's broken through because we've been talking about it for a couple of days. And I would say a couple of things. First of all, if you are a textualist and you care about the Constitution, which a lot of Republicans pretend they do, then this would be a violation of the Emoluments Clause, right? It would be. And the question of whether it's foreign influence or it looks like foreign influence, or it doesn't matter, right? It either influences or it looks like influence. Both are bad. And I think that one other thing that's really important here to remember is that the person who signed off on this, Pam Bondi, had worked as a lobbyist for the Qatari.
Yeah, we mentioned that in the introduction. That goes to the influence campaign that Eamon was referencing. And Eamon's always quoting Hamilton. I mean, you can't get him to stop. It's an issue in the workplace. I don't want to tell people what he's like by the water cooler.
That's right.
Do we have water coolers? Yeah.
Yeah, we have water coolers.
We have water coolers.
Yeah.
Fact check.
Coffee machines.
Fact check. Water coolers at the workplace.
Yeah.
And, you know, Washington says to Hamilton,
Right. Don't take that plane.
you don't have the votes.
To get
You
a
need
plane.
more votes. And that's the bottom line. We are living in a time where people are so accustomed to efforts at rule breaking or outright law breaking that hasn't gotten as much attention. And yet I showed the Republican senators, Donald Trump doesn't have the votes to get this thing approved. And it's very clear that you cannot take a gift without a congressional approval.
And why this plane breaks through, I think, is because it's so clearly not the norm. It's so clearly a violation of everything, right? It's not some amorphous thing like selling Bitcoin, which is not as easy to picture. This is just a guy taking a plane from a foreign government.
That he will be using immediately on day one and then will be decommissioned, put in his library reportedly as soon as he's done. So to your point about the Statue of Liberty, it's not as if they're giving them a symbol that stays part of the American landscape or a tool for American governance. It's actually just used for his personal privilege. And then when he's done, he gets to keep it.
Yeah, and this level of corruption sort of closes the circle on what people had said about Trump. There are Trump fans who hold the idea or mythology that he is successful and wealthy, so he'd be less vulnerable to
temptation.
this.
Right.
And what we're learning, Eamon, is perhaps the opposite.
There is no amount of greed that will ever be satisfied in this world, right? I think when you are by nature a greedy person, you will always want more. And I'm not saying Donald Trump is greedy. I'm just saying that the behavior suggests that he always wants more and is never satisfied with what he has. I don't know if that's an insecurity that has always kind of haunted him because of business dealings that have failed. So he wants to always prove that he can do better and bigger and acquire more. Or if it is simply the desire that these things are being dangled in front of him very easily, where previous presidents had the self-discipline, had the control to say, no, this is not the right way to influence our government. Yes, you can influence our government, but this is not the way to do it. He's here saying, this presidency belongs to me for the next 4 years. I'm going to see what I can use this for to enrich my pockets and my family. So when we're done with these 4 years, we're on a different trajectory.
Yeah, and as you said, it runs back into this transactional mindset because he's blurted out loud. He said, well, people are offering me things. Why wouldn't I take them?
Right.
But you don't have to be that sophisticated individual to know that if you work at a company and you have an obligation to the company and people start saying, hey, get me a freebie and I'll pay you under the table, right? That's usually an ethical violation and fireable offense. In government, if it's foreign money, for most officers other than the president, it's also called a bribe, right?
Yeah.
People usually want something back. I'm running over on time, but your final thought.
He can just wait for the plane. There's a new plane coming. I mean, the dumbest part of the whole thing here is that he has a plane now. He doesn't love it. It's old. He's going to get a new plane when Boeing finishes it. Like, this is a problem that can be easily solved by not doing the thing that looks really bad.
I would even go further and say, is this a problem?
Right. It is not a problem.
The fact that there is a military-grade, gigantic, commissioned aircraft with a full staff and a lot of security, I don't think is a problem, the fact that he wants a newer one.
But
Sorry, I was going to say.
But it is, Trump does cause his own problems. And this is an example of that.
I trust that the American military makes abundantly clear what it needs when it needs it. And if they felt that the president, the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the world, needed a new plane, whether it be for security, communications, what have you, they would have easily gone to Capitol Hill and said, we need this expedited, we need this right now. And they're working on that. I'm just saying, I don't think that they needed this one from the Qatari government right now.
Yeah, it's wild.
Molly has been trying to get me to get her SNL tickets. I just want to say that because I'm saying it to everyone, I will not be corrupted to get.
Oh, am I getting tickets? Are you giving me tickets? Lauren, we want tickets. No, I don't.
What were you offering? Yeah. Do you have a plane for him? Was there something we need to know?
Right.
Or is it like a paper airplane?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lovely to see both of you. Eamon comes back, and we don't want to set the bar too high. We don't want to get people too excited, but you're coming back for a big reason that involves an accomplishment of yours here around the newsroom, and we're going to get into that by the end of the hour. Yeah. All right. Eamon comes back. We love our guests. By the end of the hour, this upset in red Nebraska that has Democrats feeling buoyant. Anti-Trump protesters in the Senate. We showed you some of that footage. We're going to explain what happened here in a wild day at the RFK hearing, and a special guest on that new testimony. RFK, the fact checks, what is going on in the health agencies under the Trump administration. It's a story we're staying on tonight. HHS Chief Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was pressed today. This is his first testimony since his confirmation. And take a listen to this exchange.
My opinions about vaccines are irrelevant. I have directed Jay Bhattacharya.
Sure. No, like I said, I don't want to.
So that everybody can make that decision. But I don't want to seem like I'm being evasive.
Yeah.
But I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me.
Don't take medical advice from RFK Jr. That actually marks him backing down because both in his public advocacy before this job and in the beginning of this job, he did confuse or conflate things for people by talking a lot about his vaccine skepticism. And when you are the health secretary, that's going to have an impact, including people thinking they're getting medical advice from you. Now, we actually spoke to Dr. Mehmet Oz, who runs Medicare, Medicaid under RFK Jr. This was just last night. And he also found a line that was somewhere short of RFK's misleading vaccine skepticism.
There are adverse events from the vaccine. It does cause deaths every year.
Is what RFK is saying in public interfering with what you and Medicaid are doing in providing that vaccine? And what would you say families should do?
Well, Secretary Kennedy is standing up for choice. He's saying you have the option. You do what you think is best. Most families do vaccinate their kids. Do your homework, not just on vaccines, but all the other things having to do with the well-being of your family.
And you think that's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea, but it's up to every family, depending on what other issues are happening in their lives.
A good idea. this scene that played out was some of the protests today.
No clinical trials should be affected by the cuts.
They are impacting clinical trials.
U.S.
They
Americans
don't want the choice to be uninsured.
Well, but
They don't want the choice to die because they don't get to a doctor on time.
Americans prefer private insurance.
You are willfully destroying programs that keep children safe.
Are you recommending the measles vaccine? Or
I am not going to just tell people everything is safe and effective if I know that there's issues.
That's
and
really
people,
dangerous for the American public.
That was some of the back and forth. We are joined now by Zeke Emanuel, the former Obama White House health policy advisor, a doctor who's also dealt with the intersection of government guidance, testimony, and medicine. Welcome.
Nice to be here, Ari.
Let's start with the slight backing down, or others would call it double talk, on vaccines, because RFK has contributed to a lot of the skepticism. He has a platform now. He has government medical oversight powers. And yet he also did seem to back off a little bit. And the Medicaid chief, Dr. Oz, also didn't want to really be misheard there. And I think maybe there's a silver lining that he said, yeah, no, it is usually a good thing. Your thoughts on all of that?
Well, one of the things we know is that his entire persona has been anti-vaccine. People had to pull out of him, yes, you should get the measles vaccine in Texas. And then he quickly said, well, you know, vitamin A really protects you, which is not consistent with the data that we have. And we know it's had a big effect. Vaccination rates have gone down. People have, parents have actually listened to RFK Jr. and decided not to get their kids vaccinated. And here's one of the things he didn't say. All of this choice has a very negative consequence. If the population doesn't have, if 95% of the population isn't vaccinated against measles, you get outbreaks. And you get outbreaks in various pockets. And we've had those outbreaks, Texas, Orthodox Jewish community, Mennonite communities. And unfortunately now, we have children dying from that. And by the way, let me just say one other thing, Ari, which has gotten almost no attention. The MMR has that R, the rubella vaccine. If people don't get the rubella vaccine, that's German measles, and women get pregnant who don't have the vaccine, get rubella, you have babies with serious malformations, small heads, developmental delays, and many other things. And we're waiting, fearing the moment when we'll have our uptick in rubella. And that would be a disaster.
I appreciate you reminding people with clear language. This is avoidable stuff. You know, everyone's got problems in life that feel unavoidable. This is avoidable. So your view, is it, you give him what, 10, 15% improvement? Do you think it's better, even as others, as you say, have heard this, and the way they kind of blur it and muddy it makes it sound like, oh, it's a choice, so you'll see?
I'm a professor, and I wouldn't give a very high grade to that performance. You know, he's trying to hide behind this language of choice and the fact that no one should listen to me when he has, basically canceled some vaccination trials. He's closed down the Vaccine Research Center at the NIH. It's pretty clear what the intention is.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's concerning. The other big healthcare news coming out of the administration this week is that they say they want to lower drug prices by kind of pushing the companies. Here's what Medicaid Chief Dr. Oz told me about that.
There have been 5 companies that have already approached CMS, and they recognize that it's not right, that it's not fair. They were paying that much more in this country.
Can you name any of those companies that you say reached out?
I'm not going to name them because it's all confidential right now.
Dr. Emanuel, in a world of wide disagreements, it appears that at least on the political messaging, your old boss's Obama-Biden era, and this new Trump era, everyone wants to say the drug prices are too damn high. Okay. But do you see anything in this order that is real, that will work?
So far, no. You could have this most favored nation pricing, which is you go to a basket of countries and you get the lowest price or you get the average price. A lot depends upon the details. That's the first thing. The second thing is most analyses of those show that American drug prices will fall 7.5%, not the 80-90% that President Trump was blaring out. There's no chance that he's going to reduce the brand name drug prices by 80 or 90%. This is a pretty complicated area, which price you use. There are many different prices. As we know, there's a Medicare price, a Medicaid price. In this country, you have different prices and confidential rebates in other countries. Very complicated. I think there is a policy. All of us would like to have a policy that we could adopt to lower drug prices, and I think that's a legitimate goal. But rushing something out in executive order that had already been rejected by the courts is not the way you're going to get there. Yeah. This is not, we are not going to see lower drug prices because of this executive order.
Okay, understood. You've been very clear tonight, so we appreciate that. And since you said you're the professor, we also give you an A on your bedside manner.
I like that grade. Most of my students like that grade too, but you got to perform for those kind of grades.
Yeah, you can't have great inflation. We have too much inflation as it is in this country. Dr. Emanuel.
Not in the Emanuel course. Not in the Emanuel course. No grade inflation.
I'm sure of that. Good to see you, sir. Our thanks to Dr. Zeke Emanuel. Big story out of Nebraska where Democrats say they have new hopes. We'll explain.
Together, we'll build an Omaha that offers opportunity for the good life to everyone. We will build an economy that works for everyone. Yeah. Tonight, we embark on a new chapter.
If all politics is local, well, that's good news for Democrats right now, as there was another Republican pushed out a Democratic victory in Red, Nebraska. The candidate there, John Ewing Jr., elected as Omaha's first black mayor, ousting the incumbent Republican. You can't make too much out of any single race, but when you look at these off-cycle elections, people always want to know where the trends are going. The three-term Republican mayor was troubled by multiple issues. Like I said, some of this stuff is local, but some of it's national, including how ongoing support for Trump was playing, including in the ads people saw.
Ewing also targets Stothert by tying her to the national leader of her party, Donald Trump.
Let's say no to the chaos and elect a mayor who will actually get things done.
Getting things done at a local level is different than some of the national issues that sometimes pass for our political debates. Indeed, you can see more signs here that are trouble for Republicans, at least in some states, because that Republican mayor ultimately decided that it was better to distance herself from Trump, saying, quote, "I don't like everything he's doing and decisions he's making. I wish he'd slow down on a lot of these decisions. I don't advise the president." But that was her way of trying to open up some space between her and what second-term Trumpism has felt like. The Post notes this is another warning sign for Republicans after those strong results for Democrats in Wisconsin and Florida, where not every race was won, but the margins were shifting. Democrat John Ewing is on MSNBC tonight, joining our colleague Lawrence O'Donnell on The Last Word at 10 p.m. Eastern. So that's news and local news of the best kind. We think it'll be an interesting interview to watch with Lawrence. All right, I told you that Eamon's coming back. We have more news about something really positive for him around here. Stay with us. At times like these, it helps to fall back. And guess who's back in this segment? We have two legends who you've seen here. The Kid Mero, the comic, the TV personality, now a best-selling author. He represents the Bronx like no one else. He has what they call the hottest of takes. Variety said he's a top comic to watch. He is the face of a new Lids campaign, which highlights his love for sports, something we might get into. He has the podcast Victory Light, 7 p.m. in Brooklyn show with Carmelo Anthony on one of our favorite streaming platforms, YouTube.
Yeah.
And as if that weren't enough, joining us for a now record-tying 10th fallback appearance, tying with Rev Al, Eamon Moildeen, a voice on foreign affairs, which is how we tapped his expertise tonight, reporting on the ground across the Middle East and Europe, sometimes at great personal risk, and co-host of our new show, The Weekend Primetime, right here on MSNBC. Eamon, you've reached this milestone on the beat. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
But first, since you've already taken a turn, I'm going to start with you.
What's up?
Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
Great to see you.
I feel good. I feel like I'm at home here.
You feel at home?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you should make yourself at home.
Yeah, you know, every time I leave with 12 lighters. So
respect.
Because I never have to buy lighters at a gas station ever again.
You keep them at home or you pass them out?
I keep them at home, and sometimes I pass them. Well, not purposely pass them out, because there's a lot of people. I'm not gonna say your name. Yeah. Hey, can I get a light? Yeah, here. and then you never see the lighter again.
Sure.
Unless you're one of those weird dudes that gets like attached to your pocket with like the.
Oh, I
extendo
remember
thing.
that. I remember
That's
that. Was a
wild.
move. Have you ever run into me and have me hand you a lighter?
Probably, probably, and various sizes too. Because these are like
those are the jumbos.
Yeah, these are the jumbos. You
Yeah.
also gave me the minis.
Sometimes you want a mini.
You know what I mean? For the toiletry bag.
Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't. You know what I'm saying? Let's go.
Sometimes you don't. All this joy up in here.
Pick
What's
and
your
roll.
fallback?
Take and bake. Stop playing.
What's your fallback?
Yo, we were talking about this off camera.
Yeah.
Okay? All y'all jersey manufacturers out there, you got to tighten up. Because you see what I'm in full WNBA, Liberty drips, ring ceremonies coming up. You know what I mean? Y'all got to start making jerseys in our size. We want to rep for the ladies out there.
So you'll go to a sporting store, look at the WNBA jersey,
They don't
and it'll
got my
be
size.
only women's sizes.
They don't got my size. They don't got my size. I'm not just saying WNBA, just jerseys in general.
All jerseys.
The U.S. women's national soccer team, stars.
Yes.
Absolute stars. You know what I mean? I want a Megan Rapinoe jersey.
So you want pay parity and jersey parity.
Jersey parity.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
And you know what it sounds like? And I hate to do this, but it sounds like we might need new jersey.
Oh!
Jerseys. You know what I'm saying?
Yo, you say all week. ladies and
Yo.
gentlemen. Tip your waitress, you know?
I mean,
You know what I mean?
did you see it coming?
Listen, as a father of four, I definitely did. bro.
Respect, yeah. It landed worse than a Qatari plane, I'll tell you that. That's a double. That's on
He's like,
top.
Come on, son. He's like, hold on here. Don't
Eamon, help us make the segment better.
Okay, so let me just say one thing. I'm like Donald Trump. I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. So
Pure muscle.
Pure muscle. So that's why I feel like I want to get on this jersey thing for a moment. But I do want to
Also, I'm sorry, I got one more. Was it not Future who said Jersey? You know that song.
That part.
My fallback also has to do a little bit with sports. And I feel that the New York Knicks, specifically with the free throws, that has become an issue, right? I mean, I feel like we got to be able to talk about some of these players missing the free throws in big games. You cannot just be coming out here talking about like, I don't care about it. It's not important. I'm going to do me. You're in the playoffs. You represent New York. You got to put it all on the line. You cannot be missing free throws.
Can I ask you a question? Isn't the free throw supposed to be the easier thing?
Yes.
Right. You would think. But
so what's up?
It's a mind game.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Because you're up there.
Psychology,
It's
the
called
pressure,
a free
the
throw.
fans.
Yeah. You know. Like you've been under pressure. You've been in very high pressure situations. There's something about
Not like shooting a free throw in game 4 of the Eastern Conference semis, but still.
Yeah. What else is on your fallback list?
HBO.
This is wild.
HBO. You messed me up when you switched your name to Max. I was like, is this the restaurant Zach Morris dines in? What is this? I'm very used to HBO as a brand, home box office. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's our generation.
Right.
Yeah.
High quality content. You know, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Dream On, I could go on. You know,
I'm going to ask you to do something we almost never do. I want you to read the news banner because it speaks to how absurd this is.
HBO Max changed its name to Max, then back to HBO Max. What? What are we doing? What are we doing? Yo, Ari, listen, this is crazy because now...
How much money do you think they spent on like...
gazillion,
they were like,
trillion,
I think
billion.
we should drop the HBO. Max is the appeal. And
What do
then
you
like a
think?
couple of years later, they're like, we've gone back, we've done the studies, we've got the budget.
Eamon said, you know...
Back to HBO Max.
Yeah. We hired Merrill and Eamon as consultants.
I want to know, because this news broke today, and I want to know, everybody knows HBO. I want to know when the person came into the meeting room after they did the marketing, the rollout of the new name and the ads, and came in and said, hey, we got an idea. And they're like, what? And it's not even like a third name. They're like, we're running it back to HBO.
Maybe. Nostalgia.
Did they do it with a straight face?
They had to, because it's like, you can't say something that dumb and like acknowledge that it's dumb. You know what I mean? You have to have zero self-awareness to make it move like that. And, you know,
No, but you got to wonder what made them think HBO was a liability, and then what made them think it was an asset. Because at some point, it was a liability. Where they're like, let's drop it, and at some point they were like, it's an asset.
Because back before there was 5 streamers and YouTube, people knew HBO. If you love movies and you are a subscriber,
What a
of course you know
brand.
HBO. So they come back and they're like, listen, we thought about it. We like to try new things. We're going back, and everyone in the room's like, are you
serious?
All right, we
just paid this graphic artist, $80 gazillion to just knock off the HBO.
So we have our Eamon news. You are now tonight live marking your 10th fallback.
Oh, man.
That makes you a co-champion,
man.
having closed the gap with Reverend Al Sharpton. Let's live a little. Look at these moments.
Sexy Al.
Eamon Moildeen.
If you don't know that climate change is ruining our planet, destroying the Van Gogh is not going to make you care. Kim Jong-un, the dictator of North Korea, he is really pissed off about K-pop. You can evaluate music however you want, but at the end of the day, an artist puts art out there, and you got to accept art. You got to hear the art. You got to judge the art for what it is. I don't know what kind of crudité Dr. Oz was presenting there, but it definitely would not fly in our house.
Hey, give it up.
Thank you, guys.
Make some noise.
How does it feel to close the gap with Al?
I mean, listen, to close the gap with somebody of that stature on a show of this magnitude, it's an honor. It's better than any of the awards I've ever won in journalism for some of the big things I've done overseas. You know,
I gotta tell you something.
I was on the Time 100 most influential, but I feel validated. I feel seen because of this.
Wow, sneaking that
like
in.
2 spots behind him on that same list.
By the way,
and
sneaking that in. That's a
more impressive.
Time 100 is big. That is for real. So first of all, double congrats. Second, when we watch the clips, Meryl, we love Eamon's listening face. Because it'd be like George Clinton there, and Eamon will be like respectful, but also knowing that like this is a little wild.
Yeah. Like,
well, I normally wouldn't be in this setting. Like, I normally wouldn't be with amazing artists and musicians and, you know, people from all walks of life. It's not my...
Usually
you know,
wearing a helmet with a camera in front of you, like, yo, it's hectic out here. Back to you.
Let me tell you something. We're out of time. If you hit 11, if you actually go above Rev, I could see Meryl giving you the Rolly, the Jesus piece, or both.
Well, that's in your hands.
You know?
Hey.
It could happen. I want to thank the Kid Meryl, back on the beat, Eamon Moildeen. The Weekend Prime Time is, of course, weekend nights at 6 p.m. We'll be right back.
We're going to get you on that show.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Prime time.
Thanks for watching The Beat.